Vivian's work on unceded Coast Salish territory focuses on disability justice, collective community care, and autistic-led policy and research. Thank you for being here this evening, Vivian. I'd like to hand it over to you now.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for taking the time out of your morning, afternoon, and evening to join me in this workshop about collective community care and mutual aid. This is my first time at Autscape, so I'm really excited to be here. So yes, hi again. My name is Vivian. I'll give a short description of my video for visual access. I'm an East Asian person with glasses and short black hair. I am wearing a t-shirt and there's a pillow on the chair behind me. In the background, there's just a room with pale walls and a bright window. Like was mentioned earlier, I am part of a grassroots national autistic-led organization called Autistic United Canada, and I'm currently involved in autism research as a neuroscience student. I am also a longtime member of the Vancouver Queer Spoon Share, which I'll be telling you a little more about during this workshop. The icon on the slide is the one I use on Discord to help you identify me on there. I don't have an artist credit for it. If you know where it's from, please let me know. But it's basically black outlines of many cats on a white background. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that I'm calling in from the unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. This acknowledgement is only one tiny piece of the ongoing necessary work towards decolonization and justice for Indigenous communities. Disability justice work must include decolonial work, as ableism as an oppressive framework often relies on colonialism and vice versa. Traditional models of care are patronizing and oppressive to both disabled people and Indigenous people in overlapping ways. We are segregated institutions and in residential schools, taken from our parents or having our children taken away from us, subjected to therapies and interventions aimed at compliance and assimilation, all in the name of care. So today we'll be talking about creating spaces in our communities, caring for our communities, fostering mutual aid in our communities. I encourage you then to reflect on the ongoing relationships with the Indigenous communities wherever you are, and what you can do to create caring spaces that disrupt and dismantle both ableist and colonial structure. Speaking of making space, there are a few things I'd like to go over to set the space for this workshop. First, I invite you to do whatever your bodies and minds need to be more comfortable and safe. You can lie down, take notes, don't take notes, get some water, stretch, check in with yourself right now and what you need. Whatever helps your body and mind in this moment, in this space. I also welcome any requests for anything we can do to help you be more comfortable in this space. I think the moderators can forward that over to me. One of my own access requests is that I get flagged whenever I'm going too fast or too slow somehow. Also, let's give space to each other here. There will be some discussion later in the workshop, and I'd like to give a chance for everyone to speak as much as possible. Let's take things slow in the typing in the chat so that AAC users have a chance to also type or use their device. Let's give time and space for people who find it more difficult to jump into a conversation, or folks like me who need extra processing time, can't handle a huge chain of messages. So let's make space for each other. So we're back to the slide that you may have seen when you're entering the room. There are going to be two interactive components to this workshop, the Slido and the Zoom chat. On Slido, you can suggest and upvote questions that we can then discuss at the end of the workshop. All you have to do is go to slido.com and enter the event code 112200, or you can just click the link that's right in the chat or you can use the QR code that will bring you to just a Q&A space where you can suggest any questions and upvote any ones you like. Also, once we open up the discussion, feel free to type in the Zoom chat. But again, let's keep it slow to give everyone time to process and contribute. If you want to agree on a comment that was just said, feel free to throw like a +1 in the chat. Okay, so in this workshop, we'll be talking about collective care and mutual aid, first by defining them, and then I'll discuss an example with the Vancouver Queer Spoon Share. I'll also briefly introduce the concepts of disability justice and interdependence. That is a big typo. That should have said interdependence, not independence on the slide. And how they relate to collective community care and mutual aid. Next, we'll open the floor to discussion about what opportunities and challenges there are for autistic mutual aid and community care. Finally, we'll continue on with whatever questions hopefully is posed in the Slido. I want to draw on the wealth of knowledge and expertise from everyone in this call. We all can learn from each other. So the Q&A and hopefully the rest of this workshop will be less of me answering your questions, but all of us answering the questions we generate together. I'm a big fan of collective knowledge. A lot of this workshop will just be me pointing to useful ideas that others have come up with, trying to synthesize them and put them together for you. Less of me being a single sole expert on the topic, but more being sort of like a facilitator, a guide to share the collective knowledge that has already been accrued. Okay, so first off, what is collective community care? It's often contrasted with self-care. You've all probably heard of self-care before. Self-care is choosing to take care of your own needs. These needs can be for your body or your mind, or say what you need socially, emotionally, culturally, spiritually. Often when we talk about mental health, the advice is do something for yourself, such as making sure we're fed, that we're getting enough sleep, doing a fun hobby, taking a bubble bath, talking to a friend, engaging in cultural or spiritual activities. So while self-care is taking care of oneself, community care is about taking care of each other. It's a group of people taking care of a group of people. On the slide, I've used a fairly stereotypical image of people holding hands, stick figures. But a better image might be like a web with relationships and links between each person and every other person. So this idea, it can be called collective care, it can be called community care. I tend to use the longer collective community care just to be precise about what I'm talking about, that it is a collective or group effort that is just happening within a specific community. I suppose care can be used interchangeably with help, but honestly, I think it's really more than that, more than help. Help doesn't quite have the right meaning for me. Talila Lewis calls this an exchange of care, of time, love, and resources. I would also like to note that both self-care and community care are intentional. They're choices. It can be very hard to do either of them, really. It takes a commitment again and again to be kind and tender to ourselves and to others to give care. So self-care is important. I'm not denying that at all. It's important to center yourself, to say your needs matter, and that you deserve to do things for yourself that make your life better. We as disabled people, queer people, as racialized people, we often get told to push our own needs to the side for the service of others. But we can't just stop there. We have to be critical about how we're framing the conversation around self-care. A lot of people can't do self-care very easily, whether it's because of physical or mental or financial reasons. Say if I'm dealing with all the stressors that come with facing racism, sexism, ableism, and so on in my daily life, it's going to be real hard to set aside time and energy for that bubble bath or to cook a meal without at least some help from others in relieving those stressors in the first place. Focusing just on self-care means that we don't talk about others helping us and facilitating that self-care. I'm going to quote Talila Lewis again, who said, "Self-care is birthed by and through community care." So this kind of self-care rhetoric, over-focus on it, it can be isolating. It can lead to ableist questions and comments like, "Why are you doing so poorly? You just need to take better care of yourself." But when we talk about accessibility, we talk about how the onus shouldn't be on the disabled person to get support that they need to access a certain space. The same goes with care. It shouldn't be all on the individual to take care of themselves. We need to take care of each other. And more than that, we need to create systems where collective community care is established and made the norm, routinely nurtured. So that's collective community care. What about mutual aid? Mutual aid is very similar to collective community care, to the point that I see people use them pretty much interchangeably. Amara Pustian describes it as involving people coming together to meet each other's needs through material and social support, and recognizing that our survival, health, and well-being is dependent on one another. While mutual aid and collective community care have likely existed since humans have existed, from the beginning of us being a group of humans together, because humans' greatest adaptation is our ability to cooperate and to survive. The term mutual aid itself, though, was popularized by anarchist philosopher Peter Kropotkin, and that was what he argued for, really, what I just said, that mutual aid and cooperation increased survival and therefore involved in humans through natural selection. More about mutual aid, it focuses on solidarity, not charity, emphasizing horizontal structure over the vertical kind found in the traditional charity model. So it's helping each other rather than me helping you from a higher position. There's also been a rise of mutual aid groups because of COVID-19, though with varying success, I find, depending on how familiar the organizers actually are with mutual aid and anti-oppressive organizing and so on. Mutual aid and community care can come in different forms. So they can come in pods, spoon shares, funds to redistribute wealth, and many other ways to enact a peer-level structure of support and care. I've linked various pod and mutual aid guides if you're interested in making your own. In the slides, these will be shared out afterwards, and I can also share the specific links on Discord as well after. Okay, so a concrete example of this is the Vancouver Career Spoon Share, a group that was created in 2015 by career disabled people in my local community. I've been a longtime member. I've been there since almost the beginning. And we've grown from the first year, just about 50, 100 people to over 1,000 now. It's similar to a lot of mutual aid Facebook groups that have popped up due to COVID, at least in the surface format. You post a request or an offer, like, I need a car ride, or I'm going for a grocery run. Does anyone want something? I'd like some advice or emotional support. And then people comment or PM you to either fulfill your request or take you up on your offer. So here's what it can look like. These are examples from our Spoon Share how to use this group guide. It says near the top, the first initial posting of this request would be a tagline saying request, help applying for disability assistance, something to introduce the request. That's for our cognitive access. And then just more information about the request. Here it says, I feel overwhelmed and anxious about the process. And people who have gone through this before share some advice and support, please. I'd also welcome help filling out the form. This could be done at my house in South Vancouver or in a nearby coffee shop. My home has 2 fluffy dogs and 1 hairless cat, is not fragrance reduced, has 5 stairs up to come inside. So that would be the initial request. And we usually have that group norm of including accessibility information in the Spoon Share because we are generally all disabled people in the group. And it's just helpful. Then if it's resolved, then it's marked, it's edited, resolved, or completed, or thank you. So thanks, Angelica, for your help. That's a totally made up request that I typed based on some really common ones that I've seen. An example offer. So it says offer grocery shopping. I'm going to Superstore, grocery store in Canada, on January 21st. Yes, they're welcome. Leaving from Commercial Drive area early afternoon. I can pick you up in that neighborhood. And here's an important part that even when you're offering something, you're also able to say your own needs. This person says, I have MCS, multiple chemical sensitivity, and need passengers to be fragrance-free. My car is fragrance reduced and has no air fresheners or animal passengers. I cannot do heavy lifting. So they set that boundary. So why is a Spoon Share helpful, specifically a Spoon Share out of all different types of mutual aid? Definitely there's interdependence, understanding, and support, and then the opportunity to help each other and care for each other on our own terms and within our own capacities. There's these norms established about what we can and cannot do, and saying that explicitly to others. It's direct support in a community within a community. So this Spoon Share specifically is queer disabled people. And rather than just being like a peer discussion group or so on, you're providing material aid, direct support. And overall, I found it much easier to practice asking, offering, receiving, and declining help among people who get it, who are part of a community that share these similarities with me. So I'd like to reiterate that interdependence is the key idea here. And it's one of the main principles behind display justice and mutual aid. What is display justice? What is mutual aid in this context? According to Mia Mingus, display justice is a multi-issue political understanding of display and ableism, moving away from a rights-based equality model and beyond just access to a framework that centers justice and wholeness for all disabled people and communities. It's a big, wordy definition, so let's break that down a little bit. Display justice was created in response to how display rights activism tends to focus on white men with physical disabilities, and generally on single issues solely about disability, ableism, and access. So I see some spaces getting better about that. Still, display rights activism tends to leave out, for example, issues like police brutality that disproportionately affect disabled people of color. With disability justice instead, we're talking about justice for all disabled people and really centering those that are generally left behind, addressing multiple issues across different intersecting systems of oppression. Instead of simply achieving equality with able people, getting up to their level, disability justice demands that we go beyond access and integration and instead dismantle the fundamental systems and norms that create the oppressive situations and conditions in the first place. Disability justice as a movement, it was started in the 2000s by disabled queer women of color with groups like the Disability Justice Collective and Single Ballad, mainly in the USA, but spread elsewhere now. It's gotten more traction and recognition in autistic communities too, especially with autistic activists like Lydia X. Brown and Leah Lakshmi Tetna Samrasana, both autistic activists that have also done a lot of work in the disability justice movement. Personally, I find disability justice as one of the most helpful frameworks for my activism because it explicitly says that systems of capitalism, white supremacy, heteropatriarchy, and ableism are all intertwined. They all work together and all enact violence on bodies and minds that are considered not normal. Whether not normal means autistic or disabled or Black or brown or trans or incarcerated or houseless, and so on. Since our struggles are connected, our communities are connected as well, and the way we liberate ourselves and each other is through this interconnection and interdependence. Interdependence is one of the 10 principles of disability justice as described by Sims and Ballard. I've paraphrased them here on the slide. They say that since state solutions eventually create more control over our lives, we have to meet each other's needs on our own while working together towards liberation, so outside of state solutions. And state solutions meaning things like disability welfare programs, institutions, residential schools, disability services organizations, police forces, psych wards, and so on. So the more traditional models and systems of care often are delivered by the state. And I mentioned before how patronizing and ableist these traditional care systems are. The provision of care by the state is often a means of control. For example, income assistance or welfare programs, they trap people in cycles of poverty with like earned income exemption and that are really restrictive. So they can't really earn money, and that keeps them in a cycle of poverty. Additional restrictions that bar disabled people from marrying each other lest they lose even more financial security, and this fairly stringent reporting requirements that really feel like you're under scrutiny. To survive, then disabled people, people of color, LGBTQ+ people, we have historically sought each other out and supported each other outside of what is legal, what is sanctioned, what is state approved. This dependence on one another in our community continues to be necessary to both survive and to change the world into a more survivable one. So I'm talking about, okay, this is how things should be. We should become more interdependent. That's a good state of the world. But how do we do this? And it's easier said than done. I personally find it really difficult to rely on others because there's a lot of baggage around help and care for disabled people, especially when we've had violence done to us in care contexts. So one of the Spoonshare members, Jenny DeGay, had this really useful breakdown of offering, asking, receiving, and declining help. These our skills. So we practice them. We make mistakes, we improve. And it's hard. Ableism makes it hard. It says we don't deserve to ask or receive help. And the help that we do get, the care we get, it says we're not allowed to say no, that we should be grateful for whatever it is. Ableism says that we don't have skills to offer others, that we can't be caring people ourselves, that we can only be receivers of help, charity cases. So practicing these 4 skills, offering, asking, receiving, and declining help, that in itself is challenging those beliefs and challenging ableism. I'm almost done here, and then we can move on to the discussion. I want to end with some words from Nehemiah, which maybe sums it up. We need to move the self-care conversation into community care. We need to move the conversation from the individual to collective, from independent to interdependent.
Thank you very much, Vivian, for running this workshop for us today. I'm afraid we have run out of time now. Thank you very much for running this workshop, and thank you to everyone who has participated and who has asked questions and joined in with the discussion. Thank you all very much for being here today.
I'm sorry I couldn't talk about everything. I also had trouble visually following along with the chat a bit, but the Slido helped me. Conflicting access needs a little bit, I know, but I hope you enjoy the rest of Autscape. I will look forward to talking to you on Discord.